My name is Caroline Monroe, and I'm from England, and you're listening to the Regular Joe's podcast, whatever that means.
To movies and toys and TV shows, comics and collecting and superheroes. There's no end to the useless stuff they know. But don't call them geeks, they're just regular Joes.
Welcome to the Regular Joe's podcast. I'm Dave Pisani.
I'm Barry Kay.
I'm Todd Pleasant.
And I'm Brian Mix.
Hey, special guest. Another week with a special guest.
Welcome back.
We had many special guests last week.
Yeah, well, we need special guests now because we're getting sick of each other.
That's right. Too long trapped together.
It was a cavalcade of Joes last week. That was an interesting show.
It was.
That's old
all
school.
Joes all the time.
Yep.
So yeah, check out that episode if you haven't. It was sort of the birth of Joe's episode. Everyone who was there at the beginning, more or less.
Yeah.
Sean a little later. But anyway, check all that out. So today we're going to talk about a couple things. One is I don't know if we mentioned this, but we're going to talk about original Star Wars has several variations of restorations to the original as it was shown in the theater version.
Unofficially.
Yes. This is
no episode 4, no A New Hope.
None of that stuff.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
So
yes.
we're going to we've seen some, there's others out there. We're going to talk about that. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So
yes. And we have a new segment that we're all very excited about.
Yes.
It's called, should we say what it's called yet? You'll get excited when you hear this.
I think we should wait till they hear
we should wait?
the bumper.
It'll be in the...
okay.
It'll be in the description anyway.
Well, you do a radio tease on what it is, but don't say which it is.
Yes. It's a new segment called Disasterpiece Theater.
Yes.
More to come on that.
I would say this is our first version of it, but I feel like we've kind of done it. I think Saturn III could have been sort of the unofficial
It could have been the kickoff.
I think it was a kickoff.
First one, because that definitely falls into this segment.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. And maybe something else. But let's go random. I know I have something nobody has. Brian, do you have a random?
I do have a random.
Brian knows how to work the show already.
Yeah. This popped up about a week and a half ago, and I thought this would be a great random. They're talking about a Captain Proton Trek short. So if you remember Captain Proton from
Voyager.
Yeah.
Voyager, the black and white 30s serial holodeck adventure.
Yeah.
They're talking about bringing it back to life as a Trek short in black and white.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Robert Duncan McNeil is now a director-producer and has just finished his one of his own short films, and now he wants to turn around and do Captain Proton.
That would be kind of cool because it could be.
I thought it was Paris, wasn't it? Paris?
Yeah, it's Paris.
Oh, that's Paris.
Robert
Paris,
Duncan
But
McNeil.
he's a director. He's directed a bunch of stuff. I believe.
So it could be
guy.
in the holodeck, or it could be like a holodeck simulation that's just still running somewhere, and it could be some cool stuff.
I think, and his costume was, what's the guy's name? I forgot the name. It'll come back to me. Keep going.
Yeah.
From Radar Man on the Moon, the guy with the original Rocketeer with the button on his chest and
is
Commando
it Rocket
Cody.
Man?
There it is, Commando Cody.
Yeah.
His costume is exactly the same as Commando Cody's, which I've always wanted to do.
And the ship was very much the Buck Rogers, the original Buck Rogers ship.
Right.
Yeah, with just very subtle modifications. So
that would be cool. That would make a cool short track. I like those. Those have been
So
fun.
here's my pitch for that. the Voyager is like it's now real time from when Voyager ended. So it's like 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is. And the USS Voyager is in mothballs, okay, in the yard with all these old ships that are in, but there's like some power thing, the engineering people are tracing some sort of power leak or whatever, and they find that the simulation is still running in the holodeck and has been continuously since the ship docked. So, and it's just a world of its own now. It's just kind of grown out of control. So it's its own universe.
Barry, what are you watching that I'm watching?
I'm not watching anything.
Are you watching?
I'm looking over that way, which is where Todd's at. Are
you watching Todd's microphone bounce around and no doubt banging on the track?
It's not, nothing's banging.
It's bouncing all over the place.
Okay, there's this little shock thing in it. It's
Barry, how come your microphone doesn't move around?
Because my arms aren't touching the table in any way.
Okay.
It's nothing personal. It's just,
Yeah, no, I understand. This is good podcasting.
Are we still talking about microphones?
Apparently we are. Yeah.
This
We've
is
been talking about
we've been
microphones
talking
for
about
351 episodes.
Right, here we go. Dave, this is for you. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that.
Do you guys do an 11-hour day today? Because I did. If I want to lean on the goddamn table, I'm going to lean on the goddamn table.
I've been up for 11 hours.
See, this is why we have guests.
Yeah.
Okay. Todd, what do you got? Besides a lot of extraneous noise.
Yeah. From bump. Okay. So, New Mutants is in theaters. 3
Somewhere.
people saw it.
No one else is.
Yeah. And apparently, like 3 people went to see it. 2 of them were critics.
A bunch of projectionists have watched it
Yeah,
by themselves.
not
Probably
doing really
automated
well.
by now.
But the interesting thing has come out is for all the talk, we had 3+ years of talk about reshoots and re-edits, and it's now being said by pretty much everyone involved that this is the original movie as shot, and that it is the cheapest X-Men film ever made. And at one point, they argued when Fox really did not like the film. They argued major reshoots. They argued shooting as much as 50% of it. And one Fox executive showed that they can reshoot 50% of this film and still be the cheapest X-Men film ever made. And yet they didn't go, they never greenlit it. They never went ahead. And
they've just been sitting on it for over 3 years.
They've been sitting on it, and over time it became more palatable or just something they just had to get past. And so I will eventually see it. I like the characters. There's a couple of these characters I like a lot.
I've watched all the other crappy X-Men movies. I might as well watch the last crappy one.
I have a hard time believing it's the worst X-Men film. I really do.
No,
well, that's a very low bar.
Can it be
exactly? So
Last Stand is one of the worst, if not the worst superhero movie.
Did you see the last one? Phoenix, whatever it was called?
Nothing is as bad as Last. Not only is Last Stand bad, it's just completely craps on the characters.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it takes one of the best X-Men stories ever. One of the best X-Men stories ever, and just pisses all over it.
Yeah. So I don't think anything could be as bad as that. Yeah. Even Apocalypse. I think Apocalypse is worse.
Apocalypse is just really misguided, and
is Dark Phoenix worse than Apocalypse?
Dark Phoenix is worse than Apocalypse. At least Apocalypse had Olivia Munn in a tight bodysuit.
It's cruising in X-Men 3 territory. It really is.
Really? I only saw it on a plane, so it was.
It's a story that they've done already. It's like they've done this movie already, and they've done it badly. And so now they did it again badly.
If you're going to essentially redo the story from the worst X-Men film ever, could you just improve your game a little bit? It's like, particularly when volumes have been written on what was wrong with that original film.
Who directed Dark Phoenix? It wasn't Singer, was it?
No. Oh, maybe
it wasn't an alleged rapist, was it?
It was. I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was a guy.
It was a guy who's actually. I'll look it up.
Writer, wasn't it the writer?
It's a guy that's done a lot of great writing, and they gave him a directing job, and it was way over his head.
Yeah.
I think I'll take the Joes and let them be my point man on this movie.
Yeah.
And I'll let you guys see it. And you guys warned me off Dark Phoenix, so that one never got into my brain.
And
So
don't
Simon Kinberg.
Yeah, that's the
Kinberg.
writer guy. Yeah. Anyway.
And again, like I said, it's just this. I'll see this because then I will have seen all the films, and
I'm going to do the same. But I'm certainly not going out to a theater to see it right now.
No,
hey, if we don't see everything in sort of the I don't want to say genre, but anything in the grouping of movies, we would have missed Terminator: Dark Fate. So
absolutely, which is it's still Dave and I's favorite film of the year. So
that's awesome.
Hey, I paid $20 to watch Bill and Ted Face the Music the other night, and say what you will, it's a fun movie.
I don't know. I honestly saw the first one once, maybe. I certainly didn't see the second one. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I paid to watch the new Harley Quinn and turned it off in 30 minutes, even though I spent my $8. That was just brutal.
God, why did you do that? I told you.
There was nothing to watch one night. And we're like,
no, we did the same thing. Look, if I had gone to see Bill and Ted in the theaters, it would have cost me way more than $20 because
you would have subjected.
I saw Harley Quinn on $5 movie night, and I wanted my money back. So, yeah,
my kids liked it. Dave, I got to be honest, my kids enjoyed it. So
you forced your kids
anybody
to like Willow.
I offered them the option to watch it with me, and they chose to do it, and they enjoyed it.
You want to talk about like so basically Harley Quinn, and we'll get off this road in a minute, but they brought in a whole bunch of other characters, all of which have some promise, and then just crapped all over all these characters in favor of like a bad Harley Quinn movie. I don't understand. I really don't. They mischaracterized, represented all these characters, and the movie was pointless to begin with. So it's like these characters are all like
they just needed to do something with Margot.
They just needed to do something. Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
I pay money to watch her read the phone book, so I was fine with that.
That's true. This is hard to watch, though. I got to say, you
I'm telling you,
watch that Wolf of Wall Street for the scenes she's in again, and don't waste your time on this.
On that kind of subject, Tenet is also coming out in the theaters.
It's out.
Some reviewers just went and saw it. The reviewers said, loved it, can't say a thing about it without spoiling it. They didn't give one detail on the movie.
Can this movie possibly live up to the hype?
I listened to a podcast where the three people on the podcast had all seen it. They didn't give anything away, and they all said they need to see it at least one or two more times to understand it.
Oh, please. Wow. Another one of these.
And that's why I have such a problem with all of his movies.
All of them. I agree with
I
you.
have exactly the same response to the movie we're going to review later. Maybe you guys can help me.
That's for a different reason, though. Someone actually thinks Tenet makes sense. Anyway, okay, Barry, what do you got? Random.
All right, so Brian, you grew up in the LA area, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you spent a lot of time at Disney as a kid?
Not so much as a kid as lately, because I lived in San Diego, which was LA adjacent. Now I'm really in LA. Actually, I'm 15 minutes from Disneyland. But yeah, I went plenty of times.
Okay. I watched a YouTube documentary the other night about a band that used to play in the summer of '81 at Disneyland called Halix. Did you ever see Halix at Disneyland?
I do not remember the name. I saw plenty of bands. Were they on the elevated stage?
They were on the
Tomorrowland.
They were on the Tomorrowland stage. It was after Empire Strikes Back came out. They put together a Star Wars-esque themed rock band to play at Disneyland every day. And they had a bass player dressed as a Chewbacca type character on lifts, so he was like 9 feet tall. And they had a drummer who was dressed up essentially as a Jawa with a frog face. They had the keyboard player wore a full robot costume and was in a drivable like cart that had his keyboards on it. They had all this like lighting and staging and all this stuff. And there's this feature-length documentary on YouTube by Defunctland, who does a lot of Disney
and one of them is in something else or does something else that they're famous for, because I've seen an interview with this person who talks about this.
There's some studio musicians. And
it's incomparable, unimaginable today that they ever did this.
I put a couple of pictures of the band in our Dropbox folder. Brian, I don't think Brian has access to that, but you guys should take a look at it. But it was kind of wild. Like, it was a really interesting documentary because it was like these guys that worked at Disney had this idea. They put this band together. They went out and got real musicians, like studio musicians. They got a really good singer, female singer, who was the front person for the band. And the band, their ambition was to get a recording deal and go beyond playing at Disney. And they did actually get a recording deal, and they recorded an album. The label ended up really liking just the lead singer. And then the whole thing fell apart by the end of the summer. So it was like within the course of a couple of months, this thing happened. They spent a ton of money making the costumes and props and all this stuff. They played rock shows, and there's a lot of footage of them in this documentary. They had fans that came back like night after night to watch them. And then like they were just gone. Like by the end of that summer, the whole thing had fallen apart.
I never saw them. I'm sure I would have remembered that. Does that mean there's an album out there in the wild somewhere?
There is no album.
It never got released.
Never got released. And they actually interviewed the guy who ran the whole thing, and he said, "No, we just threw it all away." Like
It's crazy that there's a
everything got thrown away.
full-length documentary on it.
There is,
That's
and
nuts.
and there are posters because they would put posters up in the parks.
I
to
saw that
promote it.
poster picture's great.
That
Yeah.
poster is great. They actually got a movie poster artist to do the artwork for the poster.
Oh, does Daryl know about that?
I'm gonna have to ask Daryl if he knows about it,
Yeah.
but it was pretty wild. I thought maybe because of your proximity, maybe you had actually seen it, but because if you had been there, you would have probably wanted to see it.
I wouldn't be
since it was
surprised
very
if Daryl
Star
was
Warsy.
there because he was definitely more into Disney when he was in San Diego back then too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought it was interesting. It's called Forgotten Sci-Fi Rock Band Live from the Space Stage is the name of the documentary.
Whoa,
That is the name of the documentary. Wow.
That's pretty
Yes.
on the
That
nose.
it rolls off the tongue, too.
It certainly does, but it's like an hour and 20-minute
You're
long.
into crappy movies and
I
documentaries.
have been
these days.
watching
obscure
a
documentaries.
ton of this stuff lately. It's been
There's
fun.
a lot. I watched the Go-Go's one. That's about the only documentary I've watched. Which is
That one
actually
was
good.
great. I've got a whole bunch of documentaries that I've been waiting to talk to you guys about. So
Yeah.
maybe
I'm
every
gonna-
week I'll give another documentary recommendation until I run out.
Okay. I'm gonna read my my random as I read it, and I was reading this in the trades. And you tell me what you think of first when you hear this. Fox is at work on an animated X-Files comedy spinoff, currently titled The X-Files Albuquerque. The project centers on an office of misfit agents who investigate cases that are too ridiculous for Mulder and Scully to mess with. What does that sound like to you?
It sounds like Lower Decks X-Files.
It exactly sounds Lower Decks.
Yeah, I was going to say Lower Files.
How do you
Lower
take
Files.
one of the crappiest shows ever and add one of the most disappointing shows ever and put them in and make a new series out of it? I just don't get it. I just totally don't get it.
I really wonder if we're going to get a ton of animated stuff because of the current situation.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but
Yeesh. Please,
Ugh.
it won't last long because it won't work and it won't last long.
I at least was inspired to want to watch Lower Decks because I like Star Trek. I've completely given up on X-Files.
I've
so
totally given up on X-Files.
There's nothing that would make me want to watch that.
They need
I have
to
seen
answer
every
some questions.
episode of X-Files, including all the return episodes.
And I couldn't watch. Those were
No.
brutal.
And I'm more confused than ever.
Chris Carter needs a giant punch in the face.
Yeah, he does. I had episode 4 of Lower Decks on today while I was eating lunch, and Maria was like, "Why are they screaming? Like, lower that, or I'm leaving them." Like, she couldn't handle the fact that the characters were screaming so much.
Yeah, I have trouble with that show.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tomorrow I'll be, or in 2 days I'll be 3 episodes behind. I watched the first 2. I'll catch up at some point. I just
Yeah, they come up on the box. I was like, would have clicked on it. I was like, no, I'll find something
I'm
else.
kind of like, yeah, I can do this.
It's
yeah,
23
it's not going to happen.
minutes, so it's easy enough to sort of
It's
get
20
in,
minutes.
even
I
though
fell
it's
asleep twice
painful.
during the second episode. I just it's
I watched all of Star Wars Resistance, so I know.
okay. Yeah. That's
I'm watching
kind of like
this.
desensitized you. That's kind of like, when you're susceptible to bee stings when they give you all
Yes.
those injections over and over again.
Todd, why don't you watch that videotape of the Planet of the Apes animated show for like
God.
3 hours, and then you could watch
Brian, have you
this.
ever seen that? The animated Planet
Oh,
of the
of
Apes
course.
series?
When they were on television, I saw them all.
Oh my God.
Since then, no. But
So
yeah.
then
brutal.
Dave got these things somewhere, and we tried watching this.
Do I thought you got them.
You
I
got
don't
it.
think
You got
I
it.
did?
You bought it
I
at
may
a
still
show.
Nobody
have
even
it.
wants to take ownership of having
You bought it
acquired
at a
it.
show. We tried
did?
watching it in your office. Might have been your old office. But
No,
we tried
no.
watching it.
We watched it in the old house basement. I remember it
was
on that big
oh
TV.
my God. And it was like slow pans, like
Walking, they're
epically,
walking,
and it was just
we're walking.
like just the opening title sequence was like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just
I-
so bad.
Well, and it's so funny because the Planet of the Apes live action TV show is pretty slow and a lot of walking.
This
but
is
the cartoon is even
slower.
worse.
I was gonna say that's one of those things that I could never go back and rewatch because I loved that as a kid. I absolutely loved the TV show, and that was one of the great, when that was canceled, it was one of the great tragedies of my childhood. And
go ahead. I was just it's Land of the Lost, same thing.
yeah,
I was
but it was that
so excited when I got that disc set.
and there's a connection between the
all
two
that stuff.
because
My
one of the two astronauts was the replacement guy on Land of the Lost. I think
Oh,
it was
really?
Burke. Yes, it was Burke and Verdon. Anyways, Burke, when the original guy quit Land of the Lost, he was the uncle who went looking for
For them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
and so they swapped
right.
him, and it was like the very next year, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool because he's like, yeah. So he was the
we did an episode on You Can't Go Home Again, kind of.
Yes, we did.
yeah. We can
That
do
you just
another.
can't watch this stuff again. Like I have Land of the Giants. I have a lot.
Sometimes you can't go back.
You can't. And even especially Planet of the Apes, if they pan the camera over to the other side, you see
We're filming
the,
some other show.
you see the Logan's Run TV series, but they all filmed it on the Fox
And,
backlot.
and the other way was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
it was
Galactica
just-
80.
oh my god.
Galactica 80.
Yep. Yeah.
Brutal.
And I got one other quick thing.
Okay.
I just saw this like 10 minutes before I came down to record with you guys. Apparently, 2 separate pilots in the LA area reported seeing a guy flying in a jetpack at 3,000 feet this past Sunday. How insane is that?
Was it John Robinson?
Flying in a jetpack.
3,000 feet in a jetpack?
Was it Cliff Secor?
Yeah.
You know, and it's being reported by legitimate news sources. It was like ABC and New York Times, and it's not like
that
any
dude did
photos or
cross
video?
did cross from cross over to the Isle of Man, right, on with the jetpack.
yeah. No,
And-
they didn't get any pictures, but
Okay.
two separate pilots. So
Well,
they
there
saw
is-
the
there
same
is a-
thing.
I
There
would
is a-
say, oh, I'm sorry. Go
There is a
ahead.
guy who has a jetpack with wings that does fly it at
Yeah.
any altitude. He jumps from a
Yeah.
helicopter and turns the thing on and flies. It's
Right.
just like a little tiny airplane he puts on his back.
I also
Wasn't there
think
the
think
guy-
you could make a half-scale drone, a half-scale human with a drone, and fool somebody at 1,000 feet.
3,000 feet with a drone, though?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mine
I
goes
guess.
to 1,000 feet and it's limited. It would go
Yeah.
higher if it would
Yeah.
let me. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, I read that and I was like, holy crap, Iron Man.
Yeah.
How far off are we from Iron Man then? That's insane.
Yep.
You know who's not crazy or insane? Fanboy Collectibles. Their prices are insane. No, that's crazy.
And a good, no, that's Crazy Eddie.
That's
Yeah.
gonna say it's crazy. We're gonna
Um,
get sued now.
Those guys are all either in jail or out of the country. I know that. 3-0 Jon Snow in stock. Check it out if you love Jon Snow, even though the finale was disappointing.
You could look at this Jon Snow and just think what could have been. So,
Yes, exactly. There's a Mandalorian 3D bust that looks very Mandalorian-like. Check that out. There's those Hot Toys we mentioned always, but last week I know Ahsoka and the Stormtrooper, and those are up for pre-order. Pops and Sideshow and Kotobukias and everything you need.
All kinds of cool
Statues.
stuff.
All good stuff. If you just don't know what to do with yourself, go on their website and buy yourself something. That's what Todd does almost every 10 minutes.
It's been a hard couple of months. You deserve, to treat
This is
yourself.
Exactly.
I do a lot of retail therapy.
As we all do. So
As they used to say in Parks and Rec, treat yourself.
Yep. Oh yeah.
check them out online, fanboycollectibles.com. Check them out at their store in Newtown, Connecticut. Tell them the Regular Joe sent you. Okie dokie. So we're going to go into our first thing. So Star Wars. So there's the special editions.
Can I talk about what I did the week before last?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
But maybe just before we even go there. So for most people know all this, but for years people have been saying, ever since George Lucas made his first little tweak to the original movies, great, let him do whatever he wants. Well, some people say great, let him do whatever he wants. Some people say it's blasphemy, but everybody pretty much feels the same way. I think that there should be the original version that you can always go back to, the version that we all saw back in 77. And then if they want to release other alternate versions and director's cuts and whatever, great. But the fact that we don't have that original version has been a problem for some people.
Commercially available right now.
No, because it's that way with most landmark films. You can't see the original version, right? No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. You can. Okay, never mind. Continue.
In most of them, there is only the one version.
Or there's different versions.
Look at Blade Runner. They gave you 5 versions.
But no one has taken no one else has ever taken legal steps to prevent you from seeing the original version.
All right, this is not going to be a George Lucas bashing, even though.
Oh, it's going to be.
Of course not.
It's going to be. But anyways.
But the special editions, I remember in the first couple of tweaks, I'm like, okay, I get it. But they've turned into it's brutal. And I tonight watched a number of parts of a number of different things. Special editions are brutal. So there is a number of people taking the original Star Wars, which is in various stages of availability and degradation and all kinds of stuff, and sort of trying to.
They've taken on themselves to put together the definitive version of what we all saw back in 77.
These are people inspired to preserve what it was and restore it, or at the very least preserve it as what it was, despite corporate policy. And I applaud every single one of these efforts in one way or another.
They're spending enormous amounts of money and enormous amounts of time for no profit, because these are not for sale. They're not looking to sell it back to Disney. They're doing it for the love of the film.
Yes, absolutely.
Although I do wish that Disney would actually, buy one or all of these and make them, put out a definitive version. Because I'm not sure if Disney did it themselves, that they could do it as well as what these people have.
That's a lot of talk of will they buy this. But the fact that even before they dropped them on Disney Plus and they still added some tweaks to it, with the McConkie, as we've talked about, is ridiculous.
It is, and again, this is like, okay, so
they're touching up the Mona Lisa.
They're touching up the Mona Lisa, and honestly, it does not matter if he's the guy that made the film, because he isn't the guy that made the film. Okay, he's a very different person than the George Lucas who made that film. He's got different sensibilities. He's got different priorities, and
and P.S. He did not direct Empire or Jedi.
Right. Yes. So
I felt he could still tinker with them anyway.
He did quite a bit of it, but look, I this is where we potentially disagree somewhat. But if the original versions were there, to me, it wouldn't matter. Keep tinkering, do whatever you want to do. Keep messing with it, but let us always be able to go back and choose.
What I'm saying is don't take away the original and say this is now the original because I say it is. This is now Star Wars because
his
argument
Star Wars for years had been that the originals had degraded to the point where they just didn't exist. But clearly, that's not. If he had wanted to, and he's got more money than any of these people, clearly he could have done this if he wanted.
Star Trek did it right. The original series, you can buy the Blu-rays, and they have a scan of the original film, and then they have the touched-up version. And you can watch whichever version you want.
The other thing is the things that could not have been. Okay, so if you argue certain shots are totally unwatchable, whatever, you could have recreated those shots using modern techniques precisely and fitted them in there. He didn't do that. He chose to change the film. He changed aliens. He cut scenes out entirely. He added things in there. This was not a restoration project. This was another pass. This was he took another pass at it.
But he was honest about that. I mean, at the time,
but it's fine. But I'm saying it's not a director's cut. It's because director's cuts exist alongside the original. This was okay. This is a reimagining, but you can't see the original. We're not going to let you see the original.
So the very first time this ever happened was on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when Steven Spielberg,
the special edition.
the special edition of Close Encounters, when he went back and added scenes and added
Like
shots.
40 minutes in the ship or something. I never liked that movie anyway, but I don't know.
He had it's like 4 minutes at the end.
Oh, was it 4?
in the
Okay.
ship.
Yeah,
It's
it was
4 minutes
4.
at the end.
Felt like
Yeah.
40, but it was
Right.
4.
But
They're
the
walking
original
down
was
the
still
halls.
accessible, though, right?
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
You know, he kind of, to me, good for that. He did, in one of the DVD releases, he did put out what he had available, which was the Laserdisc edits. He did put those out on the DVDs. So that was his way of saying, fine, everybody's complaining, let's have those out there. But even the Laserdisc versions weren't the original version from 77 of Star Wars. So
Now,
No.
I just went through quickly a bunch of versions, but is there anything you saw in the special editions, and this is not what we really are here to talk about, but we're talking about it, that other than make it say, okay, this looks more like a movie made in 1997, 1977. Is there anything in there that really helps the story? If anything, there's things that hurt the story.
They hurt the story, and they detract from this. They actually detract from the story.
He adds that layer of goofiness from
and I gotta say that the
prequels that
the guy from
wasn't there
working on the Star Wars Legacy project. He makes that point really, really well. You know, you go right from, Obi-Wan saying there's no greater,
which is
den of scum and infamy, and then you go into these goofy little things going on.
Droids punching each other, and
right.
But
I want to answer
a
Dave's question though,
movie.
because I think, at least personally, there are a handful of things that he did that, while they don't change the story or make the story better, I thought he added some good visuals, like the shots of the Sandcrawler coming over the dunes, or the shot of the Falcon leaving Mos Eisley. Those things, to me, they didn't take away from the story, they didn't change the story, and they were visually interesting.
Yeah,
so there are a handful. Well, I'm just trying to answer your question.
No, I get you, but
there were a handful of things that I thought, okay, I can get why he did that.
If you add without subtracting, I could buy that. But the subtractions and the changes, and again, like I said, swapping one alien in for another, you couldn't.
And that alien, you didn't like the Wolfman alien, so you had in this freaking
slug guy,
with a beret.
Yeah.
Actually, Barry, the Falcon taking off from Mos Eisley is one of the places people point to for where they screwed up, because there's a great music cue of the spaceship taking off that now doesn't match because they added the extra scene.
Oh,
and the cue is all screwed up from the ship.
Yeah, but I can live with that, because I think it's a better visual of the ship actually coming up out of the docking bay and then flying off.
So Barry, now you're pissing on John Williams too.
Yeah, of course. I didn't piss on him. Lucas did. So let's just try to set the stage, because we've now done a bunch of research on this and we know a little bit more about it than maybe some of the people listening.
Brian certainly knows more than us about it, I think.
Brian definitely does. But there's, as we know, as far as we know, there are 3 sort of separate projects that have all taken it on themselves to do these restorations, and they're all different in their own way. So maybe we should just talk about what the 3 of them are a little bit, and what they are and why they're different.
But what it sounds like, what they're all trying to do is take these aren't necessarily restorations. I don't know, maybe that's the right, but they're trying to take
restoration. I do think that's the term. I
guess they are.
Everyone is looking at.
I would say restoration. Yeah, okay, yeah.
From
So they're taking
from their own perspective,
original.
They're looking at restoring it to its original form.
The original in the theaters.
Yeah.
On its first run in 1977.
Well, but actually, and they make this point in a lot of the material that's out there, what these versions are vastly better than anything any of us actually saw in the theater, because the 35 millimeter prints didn't look as good as these prints do.
But sharpening it and clarifying it and fixing those things is very different than changing scenes.
Yeah.
That's a lot more in line with
No, I agree with that.
Releasing something as HD, or releasing it for Blu-ray, or releasing it for 4K. And that's
So the first one, though, like when Lucas put out the special edition, these guys took it on themselves to do what they called the Despecialized edition. So that, I think, was the first major one that was out there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that one,
but that one is they took the special edition Blu-rays, and then the scenes that were changed, the new scenes they took out, and the old scenes they went back to the Laserdisc and the VHS and took those, scaled them up,
and a copy
them
from
up.
TV. So there's also films that were actually recorded off a TV airing to fill an early TV airing. They
filled in the pieces with upscales, cleaned up and color corrected versions to make the despecialized version. However, the special editions, even the scenes that weren't changed, they upped the color a ton.
Yes,
it's really oversaturated movie.
I find it darker. I think everything is darker. Yeah. In those, because you look at we watched the Despecialized edition. They retimed that. Everything, the blacks are too black.
I would just go on record at this point and say I find nothing special about the special editions.
So now
you've been waiting all night to say that.
No, I'm saying,
Todd, now would be the perfect time to talk about what you did last week.
So a couple of weeks ago, and the timing didn't work out for the guys to join me because that was my original hope. But our local theater, which is just in the process of reopening, offered a deal where you could rent one of their smaller theaters, which was still, maybe an 80, 90 seat theater. You could rent one of their smaller theaters for up to 10 people. You sat, social distantly, and they had rows blocked off that you couldn't use, and you brought them whatever film you wanted, and they would play it, and you would watch it. And so what I really wanted to see on the big screen was the Despecialized edition. And so we went with, I think it was 7 of us all together, and it was amazing. It was utterly amazing sitting there. And though the experience was skewed a little bit by being in a mostly empty theater, but it was the closest I've had to the experience of going back weekly and seeing that film when I was a kid, because it played forever. And it was
So
very,
how
very
did they
cool.
actually? Did they use? You may not know this. Do they use the projectors that they
They have a
normally
Blu-ray
use?
player that feeds into the projector. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I gotta say, it looked great. Now the Despecialized edition has, there are some things that the interior shots look much better than the exterior shots. Some of them are a little fuzzy. But the special effects are all exactly the way we remember them. It was great seeing that.
There's the way your mind remembers them. One of the things which is why, and I appreciate that they did this, but where it gets a little wonky in the whole how much do you preserve versus change is they fixed all the matting problems on all the ships. The original versions of these movies, they were boxes around the ships as they flew, especially the TIE fighters.
That depends on what theater you saw it in.
Yeah.
Because that is completely has to do with contrast and brightness of the bulb or arc and distance from the screen. So some theaters you saw the boxes, most you didn't.
Interesting.
But it is in all the transfer. It's in all the the early, we saw it on TV and stuff like that.
Oh, that's
it was a
right.
lot more,
I own the Laserdiscs, all that. Yeah. When you watch it on the Laserdisc versions or the DVD versions of the Laserdisc versions, they're very noticeable.
Yes, I will agree with Brian. I do not remember again, in all the times that I saw it, I don't remember it being as apparent as it always was.
Well, I was 9 years old, so I didn't know to look for it. But in all the versions I watched from teenage years all the way till the Laserdiscs and then ultimately the DVDs, that was one of the things that always bothered me, which I enjoyed that they took them out for the special editions. And I'm happy they took them out for these Despecialized editions, because the same weekend that you saw it in the theater, I watched it on a Blu-ray on my 75-inch 4K TV. And
they're not really that much smaller than the theater.
That's right. And I got to say, I haven't watched that version of that movie in 30 years, and it was amazing.
It was an incredibly nostalgic experience seeing it that way. And it made me want even more for there be an official authorized version of that restores it to exactly the way it should be.
Now, you got to remember that when they scanned that movie originally, they scanned it once for television on a 1-inch master, and that got turned into a videotape, that got turned into to the DVDs, that got turned into everything. So the guy who set the settings on the contrast, who got the matte boxes, got it wrong. And it was wrong forever.
And that just perpetuated it.
Yeah.
And one of the issues is, even if Lucasfilm wanted to do it the way a lot of people do it, the original negative is damaged. I mean, a lot of old movies were made on these nitrate type films that just deteriorate. Some just can explode. The nitrates in some of these old things. Jaws is the same way. Somebody famous is redoing Jaws because it's in such horrible shape, the negative.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the
Right,
Star Wars negative.
If anybody had the money and the resources to do this, it was Lucas. He didn't want to.
Yeah.
Well,
Right,
at the time, he was also there. Star Wars was shot on a shoestring. Even though they had a lot of money, they stretched it very far. So they were buying cheaper Kodak film stock.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And that stuff doesn't last.
And
right?
and again, it's likewise, he's embarrassed by some of the stuff in the films, and he also has this in his head of making more synergy with a more modern film so that it's more cohesive for newer viewers.
But even before that, I think he had an idea of a lot of what he wanted this thing to be in his head, and he could never realize it on the budget and time that he had. And then he was left to his own devices after that.
Spend your money on time travel then. Go back, tell him your distant, uncle, cousin, whatever, hand young George a pile of money, say, I want to be an investor in this. Again, like I said, I hold this film on a par with like Citizen Kane and other things like that. I really do. It's offensive to me that this is they continue to mess with this thing.
You don't think Boba Fett belongs in Star Wars with Jabba?
Yeah. It's these things.
Mona Lisa looks better as a blonde.
There's a blonde, and goddamn, give her some eyebrows, okay? It's like,
okay. Anyway,
all right, let's get off of George.
So the Despecialized edition is out there. It's available. You can find it however you want to go about finding it, and it's good. It's cleaned up. It's pretty much original to how we saw it. I find it brighter, especially in a theater like you probably watched it.
Yeah.
I think it needed to be brighter because I literally today watched like everything I had except for I do have the original, at least the original on VHS, which I didn't break that out. If they're still even working. But so it's definitely worth checking out. But there's other things, other people doing a couple.
And I would say the last thing to say, I would say about this is a huge undertaking, and he was really the first to complete this. And a bunch of people have jumped on after this and improved, I would say, even improved on his work. But this is a huge,
this has been floating around for.
Oh, it has been. It has been
a long time.
We've had copies for years.
We've had copies of it for.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is a lot of other people have picked up the torch and run with it. But this is Harmy was the first one to do this and complete it. And
I got let me talk about the sound for a little bit because this has become my little niche in here. I got a 16 millimeter CinemaScope version of Star Wars years ago on film and played it and was stunned at what I heard because it was the mono version of Star Wars. And there are 2, maybe 3 audio versions of Star Wars, which are, if you've listened to the film hundreds of times like I have, significantly different. Starting from the alarm on the Tantive 4 to Aunt Beru's voice was changed, and lines were added that weren't in the stereo version. So again, it depends which theater you saw it in 77, whether you saw the stereo or the mono version, which version you think is the right audio version of it. But seeing the 60 millimeter film, because it was 16 millimeter, it was mono, this blew me away. And I hadn't heard it in 30 something years. And when Harmony came out with his, it was the stereo version that everyone's used to from the laser discs. And I recorded the mono version off of my 60 millimeter tape, and I sent it to the guys who were working on the audio restoration, and they went and found some other pieces, and they put together the mono version of Star Wars, which is on that disc that I sent to you guys.
Which is what we watched.
Yeah,
so,
and it's
wait,
a different experience.
So what film, what visual is that? the
The
It's an
the
original
mono
print
version is
from '77 that you got, Brian.
the mono soundtrack was the 60 millimeters film I had was the original Star Wars version from '77. Yes.
okay.
In
But
mono.
when we watched it on this disc, what
Well, there's 3 versions on the disc.
you can choose.
yeah.
You can choose which one you want.
I know I watched a little bit of both.
Okay.
But is the visual the same as the stereo?
the visual's the same.
Exactly
Okay.
the same.
They did not change the picture, but they did change the audio quite a bit between the stereo and the mono version.
And that was the great thing with this for me was I got to see the same version that I saw on screen, saw and heard in 1977. And I that was just great. So
I haven't watched the mono with the mono audio. I need to do that. I watched it with the stereo audio.
Yeah. I find the mono, so many things in the background when they're more in the foreground sound wise.
yeah.
Especially in the cantina and stuff. It's sort of like, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, because they were turning the stereo versions into a magnetic track. They used to actually put a piece of magnetic tape on the film. They just had to be done weeks ahead of when the regular prints were being made. So they finished the stereo version first, and then they shipped that, and then they kept working on the sound before the film was released because the mono version was optical and it could be done much later. So the mono is actually more developed than the stereo.
I'm glad you explained that, Brian. I always thought it was the reverse. I thought that the stereo is the more refined version.
No,
and I
it's
wondered
the mono,
why they made the choices to make the changes that they did, because I actually like the mono version better.
And then when they came out with the VHS version, I think originally they shipped it with the mono version, and then when stereo VHS came out, they just went, "Oh, here's the stereo version." They pulled the stereo soundtrack off the wall and stuck it in, and everyone's been using that version since. And the mono got lost with time.
Yeah.
It's crazy how you just think, I know that you think of how many versions of this we all have.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, what's the other film like this that there's so many? I mean, it's Blade Runner, right?
Blade Runner, yeah.
That there's a gajillion other versions, and I don't have the issue with that I have with this, because that was basically released against Ridley Scott's wishes. The way it was released was against his wishes. Okay, he did not like in fact, he will now say, and multiple people involved will now say, that they intentionally were ham-fisted with the voiceover, thinking that it would go back to the studio and the studio would say, "You were right. There's no way we could do this.
You can't use this. It's terrible.
You can't use this. It's terrible." Okay. And they released it that way.
However, I have a close relationship to that movie as well, because they showed it in Texas.
Yeah.
They did a test in Texas of the original director's cut with no voiceover, and there was the audience had problems with it. They didn't like the movie. They didn't understand the movie. They didn't like the way it ended.
Oh yeah, it's Texas.
So they shot the new ending and they put a voiceover on it, and then they previewed it in San Diego, which is where I saw the preview in San Diego.
Oh really? That's
with
great.
Harrison Ford 3 rows behind me, because it was the first time he'd seen it in the theater, and that was the version I fell in love with. But that also is not the version they released, because they then went back and cut more of the violence out for the released version.
Yeah.
So that's 3 versions right there, and then you've got 2 different director's cuts on top of it.
Before we get out of this spiral, I have a lot less problem with the narration than a lot of people, because I've always loved film noir, and that was one of the links to noir. But it's excessive. It's just So, anyways. Back to
that's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other show. But
one of the great things about technology is that scanning a film has gotten reasonably priced. So fans there are many prints out there in private hands, people who, it's still technically illegal to own a 35 millimeter print of a movie.
Yeah.
They're only ever loaned to theaters, and they always belong to the studios, and they're supposed to give them back. But there are 35 millimeter prints out in the wild, and fans have been getting them scanned. And that's what the 77 4K or 4K 77 version that's out there now, which is a 70 millimeter print that somebody just scanned and put up there. And
so that was one of the original prints from 77.
Yes, it is. It is, and it looks like a print from 1977.
And which audio does that have?
I think they put both on it. I believe they put both on it. I have not watched it all the way through because I only got it a few weeks ago, but I threw it up on the screen. It's like, oh my god, it looks like a 35 millimeter projection because it's full of grain.
Oh, really?
The colors are muted back where I remember them. They aren't so oversaturated.
Yep.
As
I watched a
special edition.
I scanned through that version today, and the first thing I noticed was all the film grain because it's a lot.
And the colors are pulled back.
Yeah,
and it was really interesting seeing it like that.
But I also my go-to scenes are always once they get out of the Death Star and they're fighting, Han and Luke are in the turrets and they're fighting the TIE fighters, because that's in all of the releases from my childhood and teen years. That's where you see all the boxes around the ships
and TIE fighter,
and they're not there. And then same with when the X-Wings take off from Yavin to go fight the Death Star. That's another one where you can really see the difference. Like it's so much better, like night and day better.
I have an 8mm version of that that I got in like 78 maybe. It's just like a couple of scenes. It is the
okay. I was going to ask, is it complete? Because
it's not the whole movie.
So it's one of those scene things.
10-minute thing.
Yeah, they used to sell them in the little cardboard box.
Yeah,
I remember.
I still have it somewhere. I don't have a projector that works. I have my Super 8 projector. All the rubber wheels are just deteriorated into nothing. So, I have a 16
when you guys come out to
projector.
California, I've got a 60mm print of all 3 movies in CinemaScope.
Nice.
And working projectors sitting right here in my closet.
That's wow.
Yeah, I bought one at a flea market, a 16mm projector because I have my student films on 16mm, and I'm like, I'll buy that, then I'll watch it. I've never broken it out, but I literally carried this thing around the flea market for like 2 hours. It weighs 30 pounds.
They're really heavy. Yeah.
I think I paid $20 for it. It's almost new.
Yeah.
So Brian, the 4K 77 and that one, again, anybody Google that, there's a whole website for this, and they show examples of before and after and all that. But so that is, to your knowledge, have they done any tweaking to that, or that's just purely just a cleaned up?
That was just it was scanned by someone who loved the film, and you have to kind of ride the levels. That's how you avoid the boxes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's not sort of. Not that when I say cleaned up, that's not, like the Despecialized. You can tell they did some. They color timed it and
reconstructed. This isn't as reconstructed.
Yeah, this is just a pure.
That's a
the
better
best print
transfer.
They can get their hands
this
on.
This is just a really good 4K transfer.
Yeah. And that's where, like I said, I think the artifacting in the box, the matte lines and stuff like that, I think that's accentuated by some of the transfers. I don't think it was ever as bad in the theaters originally as it is in some of the versions that we've seen.
It shining a light through film bouncing off a screen to your eyes is totally different than scanning it and throwing it on video.
Oh yeah, if you had it at like contrast 0 versus contrast -10 or +10 or whatever the hell.
Not to say that, like I said, they weren't there.
Totally.
And we didn't have we had very different standards at that point, but it's not as egregious as it was on the VHS versions that we saw.
Right. And I guess just because of the way that we're used to seeing all this stuff, all the grain in the 4K 77 version, I found it distracting. Although I was watching it on my computer monitor, I didn't watch it on my big TV. So I would like to see that.
I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work for you on the big TV. I really don't, because I did the same thing. I watched it on a pretty big computer monitor, and it was distracting.
So it's probably as this grainy, A, because it's old, and B, the way they scanned it, I would imagine.
I've got to go look. I'm pretty sure somebody did a DNR version of it as well. Someone DNR'd it to take some of that out. Yeah. But I haven't watched.
And that's actually one of the things with the third version that's coming. We don't know when and if it'll be available. But there's another project out there called the Legacy Edition, and I believe from watching that guy's live stream, he's got 2 versions of that one too, right? Where there's more grain and less grain.
Yeah, Mike Verda is. You thought you were dedicated to Star Wars.
This guy's been spending 20 years working on this
restoring this film
version, and I applaud what he's doing.
Out of pocket.
Yeah, and just to explain very simply what he's done, he's got multiple prints, and he's basically, essentially, in the simplest form, overlaying the prints and
filling in data.
By taking the multiple prints, there's imperfections in every single one, but by merging these, he's able to clean them up substantially more than I think anybody
he's
else has
approaching
ever
this
done.
in a whole
It's
different
a very
way.
scientific way, and he's actually had to have software written to do it,
Right.
which is amazing.
And
Because
Yeah, I mean,
even-
exactly what Todd said. Every version that they've gotten their hands on have imperfections in them, but when you start to layer them on top of each other, the imperfections aren't in the same places. So each version you layer on top fills in the gaps from the previous version where there might have been something
even the
missing.
film grain, that grain is in a different spot, so you can
Yeah.
work around the grain as well.
Because the way they make movies was they shot the negative, then they make a bunch of what master prints. Then they take those master prints and they make the prints that got at the time 40 years ago, however, get shipped out to all the movies. So, the first master print could be great. The third could be great. The second could be crappy. It's all chemical. I mean, it literally depends on
and they were making so many prints at the time because
Right.
it was so popular that they weren't quality controlling it
Oh, they
nearly
were.
to the way that they should have.
And what a process like this does is reveals what are actually flaws and what are duplication errors. And so,
Right.
so he's not emphasizing and fixing the actual flaws in the film. He's actually fixing the flaws in the duplication of the film.
which,
so that- I mean, this is he's claiming he's 85. He's got it 85% done. This is the best way to look at his stuff is on Vimeo. There's a good like 3-hour long live stream, 3.5 hours
where he explains it, which is interesting.
It's on YouTube where he explains in detail and then answers questions for 2 hours, 2+ hours. But if you look up Mike Verda on Vimeo, you can see it scene by scene by scene, side by side, and this stuff is sharp and clean. I mean, this is the one that I did not know this existed until Brian, you sent us his link.
Yeah.
This is the one that I hope for.
Me
He's
too.
had a meeting with the powers that be, and I would really hope at some point somebody reaches out and says, here's a big check. This is what we'd like to take this off your hands, or
at least finish it and
shepherd it to
let us
completion,
release it.
and then we'll and that's what he's all about.
Yeah,
But one of the points that he made over and over again was this process is so ridiculously time consuming. There's virtually no other film that you would apply this to, because it just could never justify the effort.
The scene that he shows that I think really exemplifies the quality output of this process is that land speeder approach into Mos Eisley, because what he's been able to pull out of that and the clarity he's been able to get at it, because that is historically like the worst shot in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
In every
it
print
is.
we've ever seen. And he's taken that to a level where it's like it looks just like everything else in the film does, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think he actually even points out that you can even see telephone wires in the background.
You can see
from
that
when they were filming it.
And this is the kind of stuff that I have no objection to doing to an existing film. I mean, I don't like the idea of colorizing something, but I think optimizing something makes perfect sense. I think
Here's the thing, though. One thing that bothered me about it was the shot when the X-wings are coming toward you, towards the Death Star.
right.
Is so sharp. Even the ships in the very background are sharp, and I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be a depth of focus, and those guys are supposed to be out of focus.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The ship.
Okay.
And I
So,
think
so
he's
something
bringing
like
those
that.
guys
Yeah.
up a little too sharp because the computer
Yeah.
doesn't know. It just goes, "Oh, that's blurry. I'll make it sharp."
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, the
That-
point that he kept making in that live stream, which after he said it for the 14th time, I was kind of like, all right, we get it. But he just kept saying, there's nothing wrong with that shot. Why'd you take it out? I mean, that's an argument. That's a completely separate argument of why did Lucas make any changes that he made? Like, you have to remove that from
But again,
the
this guy's a
discussion.
film guy, and he's a purist, and I do understand that mindset. I agree with most. Of
Yeah, the
what
first
he was-
14 times he said it, but after that,
But
it's
again,
he's trying to
he's also explaining why he's committed 20 years to this project. Okay.
He's getting the quality of what ideally they showed it like Grauman's Chinese Theater, if it was the ultimate best print of Star Wars, even in the 77,
But
that's what he's trying to pull out.
Yeah, and even if you move beyond the best way it ever appeared on screen, if you're using the original material, if you're not if you're refining it but not augmenting it, if you're not adding to it, if you're not replacing model shots, you're not putting CGI in there and stuff like that, I say why not? If it makes it, and then if it makes it endure. But I do agree. He and I are on the same page as far as the objection to changing scenes, and that is just that's the part.
And there's probably a lot of people out there, and there's probably people even listening to us right now that didn't see this in the theaters in the 70s and in all the re-releases in the 80s and whatever. And so there were people that have never seen it like this, and it's definitely worth, if you're a fan of Star Wars, especially if you're a fan of the original trilogy, it's worth tracking these down and looking at them and really seeing what the original movie was, because that's the movie that all of this franchise was built off of.
And it is brilliant, and it is lightning in a bottle. It's pure genius. This film is fantastic, and I have a hard time finding fault with I couldn't find fault with anything in that original film, and decisions were made for a lot of reasons, but it's the post stuff that, like I said, is very problematic. And at some point, like I said, I really hope at some point the decision's made to go with something like this. We don't know.
Well, it's worth noting, by the way, that the 4K 77 guys are doing all three movies. They've gotten the 75 millimeter scan or 70 millimeter movies, and they're scanning all three. Yeah. So at some point,
I would say that the 4K 77 guys are probably going to show you what you saw in the theater, whereas this new version, the legacy version, is going to be better than you ever saw in a theater.
Mm-hmm. And that's, again, like I said, if you acknowledge that, okay, then that's perfectly fine. But like I said, as long as you're sticking with the thing. And one of the things that he said was that the only thing, if he was given license to make decisions, the only thing he would change is the places where matte lines are apparent and things like that. He would go in and do that. And even that might be a bridge too far for me. I think that
he makes a great point that no professional ever went, that matte box belongs there, let's leave it in.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that, but I don't agree that that's a justification to edit the film. And I think at the point where you're removing versus enhancing, you're editing.
Well, I don't know that he'd edit it. He would it would have to be some kind of just tweak to the same film.
Well, if you're putting black over a matte line, you're editing. If you're doing it by, changing the light, just tweaking the lighting or whatever, then you're not. I guess it just comes down to whether you're actually making a change.
There's a same kind of argument going on in the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea group that I'm in. Disney did a restoration of that film, and they did a couple things. First of all, the original CinemaScope lenses, I didn't know this. The way they were ground was quote, perfect grind instead of a special new kind of grind. So if you got a real good close up, it made you look a little pudgy in the cheeks. Yeah. They called it scope mumps, CinemaScope mumps, because you got a little pudgy. So they took that out. They fixed the film so that you didn't have the mumps in the close ups, and they took the wires out of the octopus fight. And they were saying, well, you never saw those wires in the theater. The way the projectors worked back then and the film worked back then, no one ever saw those wires in the theater. Why would we put them back in?
See, now I have heard this over and over again with the wires that are clearly apparent in films. And I've heard that. And I got to say, I cannot remember being in a theater as a kid and saying, oh, I can totally see wires there. Okay. But
it doesn't mean they weren't there.
No, I know. But I'm saying you didn't perceive them. And
there's also a difference to seeing something on a CinemaScope screen. When we were kids, for the most part, theaters were big. It wasn't until we got a little bit older where they started chopping them up and making multiplexes. And in
Todd's case, we saw the picture. They literally, because I know they did it to my theater as a kid, they literally put a wall in the middle and the chairs are still facing
on an angle.
Way.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it's on a big screen like that, that stuff is less noticeable anyway. And you're not looking for it.
Those projectors are much brighter. The transfers in TV stuff have way more contrast than those printers did. You look at like right here, how we're looking on video. In real life, this is not this black, this shirt I'm wearing, and you can hardly tell where the chair is. But on film, you'd see way more, you wouldn't see this. So that contrast.
So as the color of a screen change typically? Because I will say at my college,
now.
What's that?
They're silver, I think, now.
Weren't they always silver? I think they're more white now. Because I will say my college had like a couple of theaters, and you could change the screens. I was actually a projectionist in college, and you would lower the most silver screen to run the old black and white films, and they looked amazing. And maybe that's got something to do with the wires.
So yeah, the point I'm getting at, Todd, is you could not see those matte boxes in the theater, but because this new scanning technology is so sharp, you are adding them. So my point is, you're editing the movie by adding the matte boxes.
So if that's in that case, then I don't have a problem with that. What I would object is taking out anything that was perceivable in the theater. So
no, I'm with you there. Yeah.
So if you're recreating the theater experience, I think that's what's desirable.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll all live to see it.
It's a really interesting topic, though, that all this stuff is. We're in a place now where people can do this without the studio, than not needing the studio to get it done.
Yeah, this guy has software, and it's all. He's actually a composer. He's not composing major motion
pictures.
He's a
composer, and he's done a bunch of stuff. He's also Winnie Cooper's ex-husband.
I was just going to say that, and he's married to. So he's got Wonder Years money he's playing with. He's got Wonder Years money nice settlement from her.
And
I think he does color correction for a living as well.
Yeah,
I think he does a lot of that. Yeah. So he's right in his daily work.
Yeah, I got the sense that this wasn't like a composer who decided he wanted to do this.
No. Yeah. And the woman who appears with him later in the video is a cinematographer.
Oh, really? Who's that?
She clearly works in the business.
That's his wife now, right? She was his wife.
Laura Beth Love is her name, and she's actually a pretty well-known cinematographer. So.
And you talk about color timing. I've had movies color timed in school. You just go from it's all numbers. It's like 3 numbers. If you go blue 20 to blue 23, it's a completely different thing. And and all those prints could have been done so differently.
And
I think I told you guys this, but this is going back a long ways. My grandfather used to, my grandfather had all kinds of odd jobs that he would do or things that he did on the side that weren't entirely legal. But one of the things he did back in I think it was the 50s or 60s was that thanks, Todd. He knew a guy at a color timing facility, and anything that didn't come out quite right, they sort of took out the back door, and he was selling them overseas.
Jesus.
So he was like bootlegging copies of movies that weren't color timed correctly back, before bootlegging movies was a thing.
Of course, they don't do that at all anymore now. Color timing is over. Right.
It's all electronic.
It's all done electronically. Yeah. And in fact, his wife, the cinematographer, made a great face when he talked about how they're shooting now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have watched too many of the outtake reels, but you look at it and go, that lighting's terrible.
It's terrible. Because
they just light it. They just blow it with light, shoot it, and let the color timers fix it later.
And then fix exactly. And it's all done. It's all done in post. And
that's why she, as a cinematographer, hates that because
and despises it. Absolutely despises it.
Just get it in the can as fast as you can. Let the color timers fix it in the lab.
Yeah. So. Anyway, all right. So check all that stuff out if you're interested. There's definitely ways to see all this stuff, and don't watch the Disney Plus version. It's pretty brutal.
Oh, don't watch the special editions ever.
Yeah.
Pretty tough.
They're just not special.
Yeah.
So the problem is they're convenient. That's the only reason that anybody watches them anymore.
It's like
because they're there.
Okay.
If I could get these other versions on my big screen TV easily, then I would be thrilled.
What a time we live in. Where taking a disc out of a box and putting it in the machine is too much trouble.
Well, I don't have the version I want on a disc yet. That's the problem.
This one's pretty close.
You're pretty close.
Yeah, I know.
I got to say, I think
thank you, Brian, for sending me the Despecialized edition on Blu-ray. Like I said, I watched it last weekend, and I was blown away by it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go what's on my workbench. I have no idea how long we've been doing this, or because we don't have a clock on this version.
Okay.
But anyway, it's
All
fine.
good.
Well, if I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning.
Regular Joe's What's on My Workbench.
Yes, Todd?
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks, Dave. I have built nothing. So I'm going to do a tool that always lives on my workbench, both of my workbenches. Okay. And this is a pair of scissors.
Scissors.
These
Ooh.
are either considered electrician scissors or telephone installer scissors. They're wire scissors. And there's a lot of times that they've got little wire strippers in the end of them. But there's a lot of times when scissors are a lot better to cut wires than wire cutters in terms of being able to reach into something. Like when I'm diffusing a bomb, I find that the electrician scissors are just much more useful for cutting the green wire and not the red wire. So that's why these live on my workbench. So that's what's always on my workbench. And now I will defer to those of you who have actual projects.
Brian, what's on your workbench?
I want to see if you guys will recognize this because this is seriously old school. It's not done. I still have to paint it.
Oh, yes. Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Correct. It is
Interesting.
the Man from U.N.C.L.E. gun, which is a standard P38 with a whole bunch of stuff added to it.
Yeah, I remember the various toys they had. Is that all metal?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Wow.
And the gun is a blank firing gun. So it's got a solid barrel, but it fires these little 8mm blanks that are loud as hell. I shot.
So did you machine those other pieces?
I did.
Oh my
As a matter
God,
of
Brian.
fact, this one here, the hand grip, I made 35 years ago when I was in high school.
Wow.
About the same time I started my R2. I had a lathe in my electronics shop that I worked in, and I always wanted to make one of these, and I started with that. And now here we are 35 years later. I finally got the rest of it going.
So that's a stubby barrel P38 like they had, right? That's the
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. That is fantastic. The I don't know if you remember Collector's Armory that they made.
I had a Collector's Armory version of this, which is
where
I got the measurements for this guy.
God, I always wanted that. Wanted that.
It's in a box in my attic. I hope still.
Yep.
And I'll get that back out again.
I vaguely remember that. What did they used to have? Those
they made replica guns before anybody did, and they were metal.
I think I had a 45, and it had the caps you'd put in the little brass actual things.
Yep.
I used to use those in student films.
By far the coolest thing they did was that they had they had all the Bond guns. They had the 25 caliber Beretta, the Walther, but this was the coolest thing they ever made. And by the time I had money for it, it was gone.
There's a guy online that makes these, but more importantly, he published all the measurements of the real guns, which is really handy. And the scope is the scope from the 60s. Turns out they're really easy to get. So
it's a Bushnell. It's a straight Bushnell with
the Bushnell scope. The hardest part was the mount for the scope, which I 3D printed.
That's what I say.
It looks milled aluminum. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, it's 3D printed. Yeah.
Did you have to design that, or did you get that design from somewhere?
No, I took all the pictures and then designed it myself.
Nice.
Nice, Brian. That looks fantastic. So let's see the barrel. Let's just see the barrel end. The end of the barrel.
Is this in?
Oh, nice. That's great. No rifling, though. I'm a little disappointed there. So nice. They're really nice. Get us some good pictures of that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've got the pieces for the buttstock, which I haven't.
Oh, of course.
Yet.
Yep.
That's
can we see the end?
Which end?
You have a cap for the buttstock.
Not within reach.
Okay.
Yes, I do. So, I do have it. As a matter of fact, the buttstock off like a 30-06 rifle. Yeah. Yep. I have that.
Beautiful.
And I've got the extra clip that's got to be welded on the bottom.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Nice. Yep.
Nice. Awesome.
Excellent.
Was that used in the show much? I know it was used in like the promo pictures a lot. And
First
I know the pistol
season,
was used.
Yeah, first season it was used a lot. Later in the show, they went to dart guns because they weren't killing people quite so much. And I think this one is very fragile. There's just a few threads in the barrel, a few threads in here, and if you work on it, you might break it.
Yeah,
I'm guessing they probably broke a few of these and then went to just regular guns.
Because like I said, but I know it's in every classic picture. You know, it just with the two of them.
Yeah,
and the pistol, the stubby pistol, of course, is omnipresent.
Right. All right, Barry. I saw the model kit in your hands. What do you got? Go by.
So this is normally when we do this, I'm talking about something I finished. This is something I literally just started today, so it is in absolute pieces. But
on your workbench.
Oh, it's on my workbench, and it'll be a fun project. So for years, all the way back to the 60s, I love the Galileo shuttle model kit, as completely wrong as it was, a Star Trek model kit, as completely wrong dimensionally and size-wise, and the design of it was just wrong, but loved it. And then I started building models again, I don't know, 6 years ago, and that model's been out of print for a long time, and I started looking at getting an old one, and they're getting very expensive, so I never bought one, but they literally just released about a week or two ago a brand new version. Todd is flying a shuttle around the room. A brand new version of the model kit that's much bigger than the original vintage model, and it's very accurate all the way down to the way the sides of the roof actually come up over the top of the shuttle, and everything. It's made to be lit if you want to light it. It's got all the right pieces you would need to actually do. You can either light the engine. In the special editions of Star Trek, they actually lit the fronts of the nacelles, which never happened in the original series. I'm probably just going to light the engine. I'm not going to do the rest of it, but I got it out of the box today. I started sanding some of the pieces and I started priming it. They actually give you the door as separate pieces, so you can actually have the doors open or closed.
Nice.
Right now, I just have it.
That's a good size.
It's nice. It's about 12 inches long when it's all assembled. I've got the door just taped on so that as I'm priming it, but you can see the tops of the side. Like this is the other piece with the door. Again, I've just got it taped in there, but the tops curve.
Roll is perfect.
And roll over the top the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, that is the thing that's done wrong the most.
Totally.
And they got it right on the little Eagle Moss one, but
But you can start to get a sense of the scale when like holding some pieces together. The only pieces I've glued together so far are the two nacelles, because I'm going to make sure I get rid of all the seams. So I wanted to glue it, get a little primer on it, and then I'm going to do a good job of getting rid of those seams. But what I saw a guy do online, which I thought was actually really cool, because this bottom part of the door is on a hinge. It actually flops down. You can put the switch right inside there. You can flop it down, put your finger in, hit the switch.
Reach in and flip the switch.
And turn the lights on, so you don't have to put an external switch on it anywhere. There's no interior in this kit.
Oh, really? Okay.
But there's already a third-party aftermarket interior that's going to be coming out. I don't think I'm going to mess with the interior, to be quite honest.
It won't fit properly anyway.
It probably won't fit properly. But what they did in the way they designed it, you can actually have the roof just sit in there and like slide it in and out. So if you wanted to be able to see the inside of it. So they did a good job engineering this kit, knowing what people were going to do with it. They made it easy to light. They made it easy to put an interior in. They made it so you can have the door open or closed. They have the landing gears on it, which the vintage kit didn't have. They've got the back panel that you can either have it down or up, so that when Spock was working on it, they had it down and you can see the insides of it. They did all that. They've got that little landing gear on the back. Really, really, really well done kit. Modern engineering. It fits together right, not like the vintage kits did. So I'm really excited about it. All I've done so far is sand a bunch of the pieces down and get a little bit of primer on it, but more to come. And they give you the decals for multiple different versions.
Oh, so great.
You've got the Galileo 7 version. They've got the Columbus. They've got the Galileo 2. They've got the Einstein. So you can really make multiple versions of it if you wanted to. But
so Starbase 31, did they do that?
I don't see that, no.
Okay. So Barry, about 12 inches end?
Yeah, it's about 12 all put together.
Yeah, very nice.
So much bigger and better scale than the original model kit as well. Great. So I'm excited about it. Just started working on it today.
That's just a classic Matt Jeffries design. I mean, it's so, yeah.
Absolutely. And as you guys know, I've been texting you back and forth. I'm actually curious what Brian's thoughts are on this. There's a lot of debate about the color of this thing. And a lot of people think that the bottom of it was gray and the top of it was white. All of the pictures I've been able to find of it on set looks like it's all one color, except for the nacelles look like they're darker. But everything even the instructions that come with the kit tell you to paint the bottom half a gray and the top half white.
See, and I think using those, actual photo references versus going by the Hallmark ornament is just foolish.
Yeah, no, I agree. But
I think
it's amazing how many model kits people have built of this already, and they all show it with a gray lower section.
I think that is a memory of a shadow as a child.
Yeah.
I think it's gray below the waterline. Yeah.
Yeah, I pulled a bunch of reference photos off and I sent them to these guys, and I can't see the gray. I mean, the nacelles definitely look darker.
But you know what it is, Barry? I think it's a lot closer gray than a lot of people do. I think that it's like 2 grays darker, whereas I think a lot of and I think they probably did that for contrast and to make it look larger. And I think a lot of people go like 4 shades darker.
That could be
I mean, the pictures that I sent you guys, and even the pictures that they have on the box of this thing built, it's a very gray, light gray, and a white top. I mean, it's clearly they're not even close to the same spectrum. But yeah, interesting.
I know one of the guys that restored the original. I will reach out to him.
Oh yeah, if you could.
Did you look at your pictures when we saw?
I did. Yeah, we saw the original restored when it was in New York, and
I was just looking
white.
For my pictures. I don't remember.
Yep, that was the first place I went. But even that restoration might not have been 100% accurate. But looking at the photos from the actual episodes, it's white.
Except though, Barry, the photos from the actual episodes are not going to be perfect for how it appeared on TV.
No, but you'd be able to tell if they were a different color. You might not be able to tell what actual color it is because of the lighting.
Yes. Oh, but I think it is a different color. I think it. But what I'm saying is, I think the color that it reads is more important than maybe even what it actually was. I mean, that's when you get into like the Superman costume thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And you could have it 100% accurate, but nobody wants a Superman figure wearing a brown costume. It's like a black and white era Superman wearing a brown costume. So
Dave, what's on your workbench?
This is something I was looking for these pictures. This is something that was originally a what's in the box, and I finally got around to doing it. I'm going to send you some pictures in. This is the, I'm not done. This is the, Becker walkie-talkies. I painted them. It was easy because I was very worried about, so this is all metal, and I was like, oh boy, do I have to mask this out? No, these things just pop right out, and I was able to paint them gold, and then I found this great Tamiya plastic paint in the right purple. It looks blue here, but that's beautiful paint. It really paints well, even if you use those little cans, Barry. Tamiya, they're really nice.
Like these.
Yeah, they're great. Dries fast.
I was using their white fine white primer today on the shuttle.
Yeah, but the spray stuff. So anyway, I just have to do the name tags. Which I'm glad I could do. I was gonna do I want a laser, but I'm gonna do them with that silhouette of vinyl cutter. Because I wasn't sure, it looks like what they used was the plastic or metal from those house numbers, these old house number type things.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what it looks like. But I had one that I actually used when I built my own lightsaber. I used it to make this gold metal part, but it was very flimsy. So it's funny. I went to Lowe's. If you ever need some kind of thin metal to apply to something, these little numbers, they're actually metal. And they have an adhesive back. They're 79 cents. This to cut into,
That's a really good idea.
acetone this off, and you could do all kinds of stuff with them. So I cut these out. I'm going to paint them gold because this is sort of this in between sort of gold and silver color. It's not gold enough.
Color. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to have them be the same thing. But these are great little things to use. It's totally adhesive.
That is really clever. I wouldn't have thought of that. Because I wonder what you could do with that material with the Glowforge. Could you etch that like you could the skin of a
I
MacBook?
doubt it. It may make a mark on it, but I think it's steel. You can put that. There's a coating you could put on it that will mark, make it leave a permanent mark. But I was surprised. So these are almost done. And if you see the picture I sent, I guess the first time I saw it was the Azarian collection when he was auctioning them off. But on the show, she had this sort of silk ruffling around it. I got to find some of that.
Oh, no.
I think I may do one with and one without.
That looks almost like a garter belt that they just strapped.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a great picture of Alfred with one, and she's got the other one. But it's so hokey. Funny. It says Batgirl walkie-talkie on it. Like, really?
Well, Shark Repellent says Shark Repellent on it. So.
Hey, the Batzuka said Batzuka on it. So
exactly. So that's what's on my workbench. Currently still being worked on.
Cool.
Okay. Our new segment, Disasterpiece Theater.
Regular Joe's Disasterpiece Theater.
We've been kicking around, and we've even talked about it on the show about, watching. Is there a movie you haven't seen or you avoided seeing, or a movie that you loved for whatever reason when you were a kid and it isn't as bad, or is there just some bad movies that you like to watch? So Barry's been on this kick, as he said, about watching some of these movies. He's sort of, I know we had talked about Saturn 3, and I guess you watched it, and then we all watched it, and we realized it's tricky. So I feel like that's the unofficial first.
That was kind of the impetus of all this. You're right. And then for some reason, I just noticed that Amazon, I think it was when Sean told us that Barbarella was on Amazon. I went and found that. And then once you find that, it's like, if you like that, here's a bunch of other movies. And I saw all of these movies listed that I was like, oh, crap.
And I think some
I've
were
heard
just
of these.
added,
I've never
too.
seen them. Yeah. So Star Crash, I've heard you guys talk about. I had never seen it. I don't know how I missed this one.
I think if I saw it in the movie theater in 1979. I mean, that's how long.
Right. But I mean, after seeing Star Wars, you would think if this came out, I would have been drawn to it.
I think I saw it. I don't remember a single thing about it.
I don't either. I do remember Carolyn. Carolyn Monroe's in it. Friend of the show. You noticed she gave us a tag. We met her a couple years ago. She
not only is she in it, she's clearly the star of this.
She's definitely the star.
She's the star.
She's the Stella star of the movie.
Yeah,
exactly.
The
Stella star of this movie.
The Stella star of this movie. That's right.
And she was in a lot of those. She was in one of those Harryhausen type movies. I don't remember, but
she was in Sinbad, one of the Sinbad movies.
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. She was in Journey to Earth's Core or whatever.
Right. Version. I mean, I've also been on a bit of a Harryhausen binge, which we can talk about at a later date. But so yeah, I've seen a bunch of. I've been watching weird movies. But
somebody who was working on this movie was a big Harryhausen fan.
They were a big Harryhausen fan, but they should have called him and asked him, "How do you do it?"
I think this film is like almost a parody in some level, and I think that was a little tribute. There was what that was. Dave and I have done better stop motion than what was done in this film.
I think we have,
Yes, but what's interesting, and I know we were texting a little bit about this, and then before we decided to talk about it on the show, but this movie had a $4 million budget.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
Half of Star Wars.
Yes.
More or less, almost.
And then, they hired Christopher Plummer. I mean,
for a day,
Captain Von Trapp.
I was going to say that
for a day, and it was shot in Italy.
Yeah,
they said, guess what? We're going to put you up at the best hotel.
That's what I'm saying.
I get all of that, but my point is, I think they thought they were making the next Star Wars.
Oh,
I don't
could
think
have.
No, there was nobody involved in this film that thought
No,
this was
I
anything
think they did.
other
This
than a
goes-
B movie cash grab.
This goes back to the
You
old.
don't make a B movie for $4 million,
Wood
Todd.
Thought everything he made was.
I don't think you make a movie. I don't think you make a movie like this for less than $4 million. I think the big
You make a B movie for under $1 million. You don't
I
hire.
totally
Christopher
agree
Plummer.
with that. The Roger Corman movies, even in this era, were like $1 million movies. This had a.
They got somebody gave them a lot of money to make this, and they were convinced that they were going to. This was the next Star Wars, and they completely missed the mark. But this budget's too high, and the casting. I mean, even at that point, Carolyn Monroe had a name.
She's a B movie actress.
She is.
At
Dude,
best.
this is a big budget B movie. Okay, this movie would not exist without Star Wars. Okay,
But it landed at big budget B movie. I'm saying that's not what they were shooting for.
I agree. Although, it's almost like there was this. We all know spaghetti westerns of the '60s. Westerns shot in Italy. There was this bunch of sort of sci-fi movies shot in
Barbarella
Italy.
was shot in Italy too.
Yeah, that I don't know what they thought it was, but I don't think they thought let's just put something out that's real schlock. I think there were some intentions.
I think they had ambitions here. The sets were huge. The sets were not even that bad in some cases.
There was money spent on this for sure,
Yes.
and you saw it on the screen.
And here's what I would say: the models weren't great, but they were lit so poorly that it accentuated how what they look.
Yes.
Like the lighting on those models had been done differently. This could have looked a hell of a lot better.
I'm just saying, if you could see the original cut of this, no, just kidding.
It's funny because even though you got to watch this thing. The star field is like not just white lights; it's red lights.
They're all
and
different
yellow
colors.
lights, green lights.
Yeah.
But in some scenes, the models are just not even painted; they're
Right.
just pure. But if you took a good model, those special effects are not the worst we've ever seen.
That's what I'm saying.
No, they're
and,
not.
And the lighting just completely blows them out in a way.
Those were done unlike Star Wars, where they used motion control and optical printers.
These were
Those
done
were
with
shot.
wires.
Those are models flying in front of a black
Yep.
screen with colored lights on it. There was no matte photography involved in
Right.
those models.
Th-
It was
Yeah.
all
this-
just
But had they lit it differently, it could have looked a little better. Is all I'm saying.
This
and they
was
certainly,
a straight.
they certainly
This was a straight B movie that
All right,
they
let's not
tried to
argue
turn
what it-
that they tried to turn the dial up on.
Let's just take it in for what it is.
No, that's
It's
what
a
I'm saying. Is
disasterpiece.
this was a B movie that Star Wars all of a sudden was raking in tons of cash, and they said, "We get this thing. Let's go ahead. Let's get some investors. Let's crank this up." I think there may be a little producers type scam in here because I don't see $4 million here, but I think, I think this was something.
Well, here's where the $4 million comes in.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that they tried to do was very ambitious, and
Yeah.
they clearly gave it to people that didn't know how to do it, and they probably
Right.
spent a lot of money trying to figure out how to do some of the Harryhausen type of stop motion stuff. They built a lot of very large sets. They built a lot of models.
There's a lot of money.
You know,
you don't get Marjo Gortner for less than $50 a week. So I don't know.
And again, it's like, I mean, even young David Hasselhoff, because it's
this is clearly pre Knight Rider.
oh my
for
god,
sure.
However, he was the best actor in the movie.
He was definitely the best.
Next to those other people, he was fantastic.
Well, I mean, you've got Christopher Plummer in
Christopher
there.
Plummer gave a pretty good
he,
performance.
he whispered
he
through
was-
the film.
He whispered through the film, and it's that like whole monologue thing in the end where he's just sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, there's going to be a sequel, and I'm just going to make a lot
But
more."
you also know he went into this thinking, I'm going to be the Alec Guinness of this movie.
I
because
honestly,
you know
I
what?
was-
Because he'd probably never seen Star Wars. Okay, so
Yeah, I think he went to this film thinking, I'm going to get $1 million and I'm going to go to Italy. That's
$1
what I was
million.
thinking.
There's no way he got $1 million.
But I get the sense that he that monologue at the end and that whole sequence, like he thought he was the Obi-Wan of this thing.
They hired him for a day. I mean,
Yeah, of course they did.
yeah.
Anyway,
My
There's a
favorite
reason
part of the
there's a
movie,
reason
though,
he had one costume despite being an emperor.
So
because Carolyn Monroe had to wear 17 different costumes.
Oh my God.
And okay, but I will also say to that end, okay, this was, the campy elements in this were done well. The costume designer, the credited costume designer for Carolyn Monroe, in several cases should have been Wally Wood. Okay, I mean the silver over the red with the bubble helmet and stuff like that is right out of 50s science fiction comics. This was in some ways what they pulled off with Flash Gordon. Okay, they were trying to lean into that kind of stuff.
She had the most, unrealistic, implausible costumes for what she was doing.
Absolutely. But
when she was on the slave planet, everyone's in rags, and she's in this leather bikini with a high vampire collar.
Okay, and again, not that I expect there to be high continuity in a movie like this, but she's on that planet with that high collar thing, and it's got a red lining.
Yep.
She goes back to the ship, and she's in a completely different high collar thing without the red lining. And then the next scene, she's back in the other costume.
So Barry, watch the scene from the time she's in a planet, the time she escapes. 4 times the boots that she's wearing changes. Okay, they go from like 4-inch heels to being flats. Okay. To then being like 4-inch heels again, and then she gets in a fight and they're flats, and it's not a stunt person because you can see her face through the whole thing. The other thing is, correspondingly, her hair goes from just kind of like hanging straight down and being very tight to her face to being totally like
blown out.
Blown out. And they didn't even give a shit about continuity.
No.
It was
She
just
looked
like,
good,
okay,
though. That's all they cared.
Well, so
the Monday shots
say
are
that.
here, the Tuesday shots are here.
She looks fantastic, and the outfits certainly didn't hurt. But my favorite character in this whole thing is Elle, the robot with the Southern accent.
Oh my God!
Why would they do that?
Yeah, but you say, why would you do that? But then you're watching The Black Hole, and it's like the folksy robot again. It's like,
what that dude's voice sounds like? I just remembered. I'm listening to him. He sounds like the dude on The Expanse, who the pilot on The Expanse. He sounds like his voice. He's got a little bit of a southern accent on his voice.
But the thing with this is that it's a robot head that doesn't even have any facial features. They clearly could have put any voice on this they wanted. They totally overdubbed.
They were trying to be ironic.
But it was like, that was hilarious. I mean, and he was talking, not only did he have the Southern accent, but like he was saying things that you would expect like a Southerner to say.
Oh, yeah. It was a Texan thing.
Yeah.
And that's where Alex Kamal is supposed to have a Texan drawl. So yeah, that makes sense. But
let me ask you this. Is Carolyn Monroe, as lovely as she is, was she a horrible actress, or was the woman who did her voice the horrible actress, or both of them?
Yeah, everybody was dubbed.
Everyone was dubbed.
The horrible actress matched the horrible acting. The voice matched the acting.
I totally disagree. Again, I feel she should have got an Oscar nomination that year. I mean, who won in '78? Okay, couldn't have been better than this.
If 79 was Kramer versus Kramer, I think Meryl Streep. She just lost out to Meryl Streep.
So can any of you tell me the plot of this movie?
Yeah.
The plot was to get $4 from as many people as possible in 1979. That's what the plot was.
The plot was that, I'm not sure I can fully explain it, but I will do my best.
I think you have a good sense of what the plot is.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll fill in the holes.
She's a bounty hunter, her and the guy with the curly hair who looks like the lead singer of REO Speedwagon.
Well, you don't know that dude, first of all. Marjoe Gortner there's nothing he's in that's not horrible.
Yeah.
He was this D-level actor in the 70s that showed up in a lot of things, and why anyone would hire that guy? He's just...
Well, when I looked him up on IMDb, it's a modern picture of him.
Mork's outfit too.
Yeah, it was Mork's outfit for sure. But yeah, so they're bounty hunters, right? They're hired by the
smugglers.
Emperor. What are they?
Smugglers, I think, right?
Smugglers. Yeah, they're hired by the.
They're smugglers. Yeah,
and let's get down to, so she's basically Han Solo, and
Chewbacca.
He's Chewbacca, and a
Luke
Jedi.
Skywalker.
And
right?
a Jedi.
If you really want, you got to point that's where they figured that out.
Right.
So keep going.
Right. So they're hired to go track down the prince or the missing prince, right? There's 3 ships that have gone out.
The 3 ships left the big ship that was destroyed, and they're trying to find the prince that was on one of those ships, so they're tracking it down.
Oh, okay.
And the dude,
where the 3 launches were.
Right. Wasn't the prince like the side thing, though? There was something about...
No, they were captured because they were smugglers, and then the people who captured them turned them over to Christopher Lee or whatever his name is. Was the guy's name? Not Christopher Lee. The other guy.
No, it's.
But didn't they want him to find the? They wanted him to. They wanted him
Christopher Plummer.
Christopher to find Plummer. The ship, and it was like
they wanted to find the ship because his son was on the ship. I thought
that was like an add-on. I thought it was like, and my son.
So they went to different places to find the ship, and they finally found it. And who do you know? It's David Hasselhoff.
Okay, so the 3 ships that took off in the beginning of the film were escape pods from the prince's.
Exactly. Yes.
They called them launches, and that's.
They did not explain that at all.
Yeah, they did. I got that.
I kind of got it.
And Darth Vader happens to be the same guy who's the loan shark in Rocky.
Yeah.
And he was also in The Godfather. That guy was in The Godfather, Rocky, and then he went to this. That's
so my favorite thing with him is when he's talking to the 2 robots, and he's not actually looking at the 2 robots. He's shifting his gaze back and forth between the two Harryhausen robots. But he's not actually looking at either one of them at any point because they're not there.
Worry about sight lines,
right? Well, the two Harryhausen-esque segments was those silver action figures that they were holding up in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And then he's giving them instruction, and he's not even looking at them. And then he's like shifting back and forth between the 2, and they're like saying, "Yeah, there's a guy there, and there's a guy there," but he never got close to looking at one of them.
They got a tennis ball on a stick. They did
that other sequence on the beach that was supposed to be like the scenes out of Sinbad, where you've got this giant guy who was basically made of tinfoil, who had the sword, and he was chasing them. And those scenes were so out of focus and so poorly shot. And
I think those were they projected them and then put the action figure thing in front of them because you could almost see the screen.
Yeah, it was so badly done.
It was really bad.
You have to ask yourself, like, where did the $4 million go? Because, like,
I think this was models and effects.
I believe this was the producers like Scam. They said, "Oh, we're making the next Star Wars here. Invest." I bet they collected $4 million to make this film and spent $2.5.
And they spent a lot of film on those models flying around.
Yeah.
I could not believe how much model footage. It's like
my God! Towards the end, that battle with the hand-shaped thing. Oh my God! It went on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And most of those ships were like model sprues. They didn't even take the time to take the sprues.
There were sprues on the bottom.
There were definitely sprues in some of the stuff. Yeah.
But my favorite sequence, I think, in the whole movie was when she froze on the ice, and then they brought her back up on the ship and they defrosted her.
And then immediately, like, her hair,
perfect hair
and makeup.
Yeah.
So bad.
That was awesome.
I didn't get to talk to her about Star Crash. We only talked about James Bond when I met her,
But I think this falls into the "it's so bad it's fun to watch" category for sure.
I was so upset because I was an hour and 15 minutes in this movie when I realized they did an MST3K of this. I could have watched 3K version.
You should have watched that. Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah. But
it plays longer than it is. It's only an hour and a half, but it feels longer.
It feels longer,
yeah.
But yeah, it's if you want an hour and a half to kill, some nice eye candy with Caroline, some just crazy, like, what the hell were they thinking? Complete rip-offs of stuff. I mean, the freaking lightsabers.
I thought it was fun. I mean, I laughed quite a bit watching it. And it's on Amazon, so if you have Amazon Prime, it's free.
Yeah, watch. You compare this to like a Saturn III. Saturn III never set out to be a B movie. It's
my God! Saturn III thought they were making a good film.
Yeah.
They really, really did.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was ever under that illusion here at all.
No,
I disagree.
Oh my God, no! I don't think anyone ever thought that this was anything other than a cash grab, and that they were going to rake in some money based on the
Roger Corman was involved in this in one way, whether he bought it and then distributed it.
Yeah.
But
The script of this movie must have been 10 pages long.
Yeah.
It's like space battle, 3 lines of dialogue, robot battle, 3 lines of dialogue.
There were a lot of reaction shots where somebody just went, "Oh!" There's a
The
lot
other
of
thing
like,
is,
was
I think
laughing,
when you
screaming and stuff.
really one of the true signs of a B movie is when there's almost no 2 shots in a conversation. Okay, when it's like full on this person, full on that person, full on this person, full on that person, and you watched. There was one sequence where they did that like 14 times, and then they pulled back, and nobody was saying anything.
Yeah, no coverage. Yeah.
And it was like, because these people aren't really actors. You know, you can stand in front of them and hold a card, but that's the best you can do. Okay. And we can do a close up on every single dialogue shot. And it was
when they rebuilt the robot. That was hilarious to me.
Oh my God! Yeah, I was almost happy he was dead, but
our best scientists. We put our best scientists. Well, pretty much the end of your universe is coming. You could have put a few on that.
Some of the things, it's like they built that little space pod and they built it in full scale to land it on the beach or wherever the hell they landed. That was crazy.
Well, that's where your $4 million went. They did spend a lot of money on sets and models,
And they shot in some pretty outrageous locations. Those locations were, they were fooling around. They went to a glacier and they went to.
They could also have gotten really swindled by the people doing special effects, because at that point no one had any idea what it took to do that stuff.
I think it was totally like, if there's 30 minutes of special effects, they probably shot like 40 hours and there's so minimal amount that's usable.
Yep.
It's a lot of hit.
Well, hey, look, that happened to Star Wars too, right? I mean, Lucas talks about the first footage that he saw when, he was off in England making the movie, and then the guys were back in California in ILM making, the effects. When he got back, how little they actually had accomplished. And they'd spent a fortune, but they were building technology, not just
they were inventing how to do it.
These guys were just
Star Trek. Was it Star Trek: The Motion Picture, or was it Star Trek 2? It was one of the Star Trek movies. Was the same problem.
5.
Oh, 5. Right, 5.
That was the one they were filmed in Hoboken. I walked in when they were doing this effects, and like, how do you get in here? They didn't know what they were doing.
Yep.
Because I called Kodak, and I'm like, I'm working on Star Trek 5. We didn't get our shipment this week. Do you have the right address? And then Kodak gave me the address. Then I went and found them.
Which is why they now use cover names for all film productions.
Yeah.
It's entirely because of Dave.
Thank you. So, go see Star Crash. It's on Amazon. Check it out. We have to come up with the next one of these we're going to do, because there's so much out there. I wonder if we do some, and we almost have to classify this. Like Todd and I sort of lean to, they didn't think they were making a masterpiece. They thought they were making something that would do well, but they didn't think. I feel like a movie like A Battle Beyond the Stars thought they were making a really good movie. Whether we do that next or we do it sooner.
Well, I'm watching it. I didn't finish it today. I fell asleep.
I am watching it.
And I do think we have to go back to the classics like Plan 9 from Outer Space, Robot Monster, and some others. Do you think The Black Hole fits into this?
I think The Black Hole fits into this. I think if we did a brief wrap up of the Star Wars cash grabs, because that is very different than this.
Mm-hmm.
But neither of these films would have been made without Star Wars.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
Forbidden World jumps to mind too. That was another one.
Well, and I don't know. I'm sure that Todd, you would, and maybe all of you would say that Barbarella doesn't fit into this, but I watched that.
Barbarella fits into something that's just crazy and fun to watch, but not good.
It is very much a product of its time.
Yeah.
So
now Zardoz, on the other hand.
Oh God! So, I'm sorry. I will sit out that week.
I've never seen that one either.
Put it this way: a film where Sean Connery is wearing Carolyn Monroe's outfit, I can't do it.
I've never made it through it. I've
All right,
never,
what-
I've tried it, never
What would
finished.
you put if you're picking a Sean? I wonder. We'll come up with a formula of how we're going to do this, or maybe no formula.
Zardoz to me is we start recording at like 10 o'clock on a Friday night and we drink the whole way through it and do a commentary.
Oh my God! No,
Have you
no
ever?
one will
You've
do
never
that.
seen it?
I've never seen it.
You need to. Would you, if you had to pick a Sean Connery, would you pick this or Highlander 2? That
For being bad?
yeah.
I'll tell
Not
you, you know
this.
what I haven't seen in forever that I would watch again, and it's not a disaster. It wasn't what they wanted, but Outland.
I don't.
I'd like to
think
see that again too. I only ever saw it in the
I'd
theater.
like to see that. I don't think that fits into this.
No, it
category.
doesn't. But I'm saying it doesn't have to always be a terrible movie. It can just
It
be
has to be a
something that
disasterpiece.
hasn't been well.
How about something that just did disaster at the box office? Because Outland did not do well.
Outland, exactly. Yeah.
I haven't seen that in forever, but we'll revisit this often. I have a feeling there's plenty of things to see, and we'll let you know. And if you have suggestions, throw them
Yeah,
at us.
please do, because
Yeah, we're going to try to make them things that are easily accessible, either on Netflix or Amazon or something, so that you guys can play along and have as much fun as we're having.
Yeah. So anyway, I was without asking if there's a last thought. I think we definitely have a last thought in that Chadwick Boseman, who plays Black Panther, passed away kind of suddenly to the public. He had colon cancer for the past 4 years, and that's and while making a lot of these movies, so that's just awful. And everywhere we've read and heard from people, it sounds like he was an awesome dude who just accomplished a lot when he was up against a lot. So certainly
watch the Marvel tribute that they released. It's very good, and it's again it is an incalculable loss. I mean, this guy played iconic figures and did it very, very well, and brought Jackie Robinson and Thurgood Marshall and T'Challa to life, and is associated with those characters in people's minds in a way that it's very hard to play characters where you're coming in either a real person or someone who's got 50 years of history attached to it and owning that character. And he did that. And it's an incredible tragedy.
even if you just narrow it down to Marvel, I mean, he made certainly one of the first major African American characters, really brought it to life on the screen, and it's a shame. And
I saw an interview with him where he was initially uncomfortable with the reaction, like African Americans were greeting him with the Wakanda salute. And it took him a little while to realize just how important the film was to them. And then he embraced it somewhat. And, this is, if you think of it,
a hero it's tough for, someone wherever they are to maybe look up to a hero that doesn't look like you.
And exactly.
People
and
had
there
one,
were,
and that was
there were
great.
children all over the planet that could look at him as a hero and see themselves. And this is a huge loss for them as well.
Oh yeah. I mean,
As
it's
well as
a
everyone knew
huge
him
loss.
and loved him, but it's
on a lot of levels, even down
That's what
to
I was exactly just going to say.
the
It's a
movie
loss on-
universe, which is insignificant compared to his family and stuff, but it has a huge reach. And
Look, the reality is we know that Black Panther was meant to be one of the characters that moved forward in this new phase of
without
Marvel.
question.
So.
Yeah.
The reach of this, I know you guys don't watch the sports ball or the sports car, but Formula One racing in Europe is huge. The best driver in the world is Lewis Hamilton, a black Englishman. He won the race last week, stood up in his car and did the Wakanda salute.
Yeah.
At the end of the race. So that's the reach
like
of this man.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, please. Any other last thoughts?
I have a what's in the box I've got to show you guys because of your last show.
Okay.
We'll do that.
This is really a what's in the box because while my wife was cleaning out her closet, she came across this.
Oh.
Ooh. Did she know she had it?
She did. She was a horse nut growing up. Like you like G.I. Joe, she loved Breyer horses.
Oh,
So
yeah, sure. Yeah.
She bought every kind of horse there was, including Scout. I'm holding up a box of Scout.
Sure. Yep.
Scout, the Tonto.
Tonto's
Lone
horse
Tonto.
from the
the
Gabriel
Gabriel-
Lone Ranger line,
Yeah.
which we
You
referenced
guys
last
were
week.
talking about
That
this
box
last
looks
week.
great. Is that
The
a new
box
box?
is
The
fantastic.
box is in fantastic condition, and I've never opened it.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So,
opening it here.
Oh, is it still sealed or is it?
oh no, it's not sealed.
Okay.
No. It's full of Kathy's. Oh, okay. This is
Oh, that's
it's,
Josie West.
Josie West is in there.
That's
Josie
Jim,
West is in there.
Big Jim's girlfriend.
No,
Jim's underage girlfriend.
and here's
totally is. Yeah.
this
Oh yeah,
is
there's
great.
Scout. I see him.
Oh, there he is.
Kathy made a little blanket for him apparently because he's
Yeah,
wearing a little
yep.
horse
Oh,
blanket.
that's awesome.
Oh, that's so
awesome.
funny. Nice.
So
And
that's
he's got. I know. I mean, I actually recently sold mine, but I had one of those, and it has the saddles and the reins and the whole thing.
this does not have the accessories, unfortunately.
Okay.
It just has the. But he's in beautiful shape.
Oh, yeah.
He is. Look at that.
Yeah, those things are very prone to like the plastic melting in certain spots. So if he's in good shape,
Oh.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Does he have his stand? Because there's also a little like dirt stand he's supposed to be able to put his
He
hooves
does
into.
not. No, Josie
Paw,
has
the
her.
foot, the
I almost
hoof,
said
the
paws.
paw.
I said hooves.
Paw.
The hoof.
Josie
That's from
Josie has
Goodfellas.
her hat, but that's all she has for accessories. But the box is actually
That
good.
box is in fantastic shape.
So you think those figures had in a different part of the country? Maybe they caught it. I never knew anyone who had those.
I had
That's
them
what-
in New York. I grew up having those toys.
See,
It's
I
funny.
didn't know anybody that had those, but I always saw them in the catalogs and thought they were really cool.
You look for the value, and considering they probably made 100th of these of the GI Joe stuff, right? They made thousands of GI Joes. These are hardly any, but they're not really valued at all. They just weren't
Yeah,
popular.
no,
anymore.
I like
Yeah.
I said, I don't know, halfway through this podcast, not this episode, but us doing the podcast, I kind of got it in my head that I wanted like every toy that I had when I was a kid, and I went out and got a bunch of the Lone Ranger stuff and sold it earlier this year, and got back more than what I paid for it. But yeah, I mean, they don't go for the kind of money that you would think a
But
toy
there
of
was
that
some
age.
crazy cool stuff for that.
Yeah.
You know, the like prospector disguise and all that kind of stuff. It was just
I never saw that stuff. I
never
may
saw it at
have-
retail. I saw it in
saw
catalogs.
it.
Mine might have come from catalogs. So
Yes,
I
yeah, I
don't know.
saw it in
only saw them when I
catalogs. I
picked them
never
up in
saw it at
lots.
retail, and I never knew a kid who had it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, cool.
Cool.
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
That's
Thanks
my
for
last
sharing
thought.
Yeah. All righty. Well,
We'll be
Go
back
watch
with the
Star
show next
Wars.
week.
go watch Star Crash. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.